Unlike a woodworking friend I know, I think a mitre saw is one of the most useful tools any DIYer can own. So today I'm going to show you how I build a mitre saw station with micro adjustment, so you can level it up and down, left and right, backwards and forwards, so you can make the outfeed and the mitre saw and the infeed all exactly on the same level and plane, that will make your cuts accurate and nice. We've gone back in time about 24 hours from what you just saw, and this is where I currently am. I've just built this new work surface all the way along here and extending to the end here, but left a 700mm or 28-inch gap to accept a new mitre saw. Now, when I did this, I didn't actually know which mitre saw I was going to buy. So 700mm is probably big enough or near enough anything on the market. Now, to build this lightweight work surface, I use 18mm MDF and 3x2 CLS in exactly the same way as I did a few years ago, starting with fixing the 3x2 on the wall, then using 600mm or 2-foot strips of MDF. That means I can get 2 out of 1 full sheet. Fixing on a front rail and side rails, again of 3x2, held up with simple legs, just every metre or so, and then anchored into the concrete at the bottom so they don't go anywhere, which I think is the simplest, quickest and cheapest way of building a work surface in your garage or workshop. And I would call this a work surface rather than a workbench. A workbench should be a lot stronger and a lot heavier for heavy work. This is okay for light work and storage, and also putting fixed power tools on like band saws and sanders, and in my case this mitre saw. Height wise, this is just under a metre, which is quite high for a work surface or a workbench, but I've done that for 2 reasons. Firstly, I can get my IKEA boxes, either 2 big boxes or 3 medium boxes underneath at that height. And secondly, when I'm cutting wood on a mitre saw, I do like it a little bit higher than a standard workbench, very similar to the height that a mitre saw is if you actually put it on a normal workbench. So what I have to do now is essentially put a shelf in here so I can sit the mitre saw on it, so the bed of the mitre saw is exactly the same level and in the same plane as this MDF either side. And I've started with some vertical MDF, and you'll see the legs here. That's easily going to take the weight of the mitre saw, and having these vertical sides essentially boxing in this area means that any sawdust that doesn't go down the shop vac will end up in this area, and I can just vacuum it out just to clean it out. Now, to put in a shelf here so the bed of the mitre saw is level with these tops isn't as easy as you think, because you do want it accurate. If you're just going to measure down between the feet of the mitre saw and the bed and then put a shelf in, I guarantee you're going to be a few millimetres adrift, and that means that the timber that you cut in the future is never going to be quite sitting exactly on the bed of the saw and on the timber either side, which means you're not going to get accurate cuts. What we need to do is we need to put a shelf in that we can micro adjust left and right, back to front and up and down. Adjustments that we can make 1/10 of a millimetre to get it exactly all in one plane at the right level. That's really easily done. I'll show you that in a minute. Before we do that, I think the first thing we need to do is make the basic shelf for the saw. It doesn't really matter how you make this shelf, as long as it doesn't sag. I'm just going to use the same MDF and 3x2 technique on the flat, spanning from one side to the other just to support the saw securely. You'll notice I'm using my new mitre saw here. Next week on my Tools and Effects channel, subscribe if you haven't already done so, I'll be going through all the things you need to look out for when you're choosing to buy your new mitre saw. In the meantime, watch me make this very basic shelf that isn't really that interesting, so I thought I'd make it a little bit better with some 80s music. one base. That's the base of the Mitre saw finish, and I haven't actually screwed it down yet, but I just want to show you how this is all going to work. So this is my base, or my shelf, that the saw sits on, and then it's going to sit on one of these 3x2s on either side of the gap. They're going to get bolted on to the sides there quite firmly. It's just going to span across from one on either side. So what I need to do for my micro adjustment that I talked about is I need something between the shelf and the fixed point on either side to be able to move it up and down, both front and back. And to do that, I'm going to use some threaded inserts and some bolts. Now, I buy these things in packs just because, just for a few quid, you get different sizes. So in projects to come, you might be able to use them. These packs are about £7 to £9. I get them on Amazon because this isn't the sort of thing you can find necessarily in your DIY shop. I'll put the links to these threaded inserts in the description below. So I'm going to go for the biggest ones. I think these are the M8s. So a threaded insert like that, going to the bottom of the support in there. Then I can wind this nut in. Let's just wind it all the way in. And then essentially the shelf will sit on that nut, which means as I undo and screw in that nut, I get that micro adjustment up and down. So this, I can move the shelf up and down, well, maybe 15, 20 millimeters, give or take. So as long as I get this support in the right level, then I can get myself whatever adjustment I want. I need one more thing, that once it is at the right level, I need to screw it down to make sure it doesn't come up, but that's easily done. All you're essentially doing is screwing the two bits together. So all I need to do now is measure the distance between the bed and the mitre saw and the underside of the shelf, then add in some adjustment from this, maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 millimeters, and then I know exactly what the level of the support is relative to the top level. So once I've worked that out, I can fix this. Using threaded inserts is really easy. Just drill a hole just big enough to be able to screw them into the timber. These M8 inserts I'm using a 10mm bit here for, and then with a hex or Allen key just screw them in, and it means you get a really good connection with a bolt or threaded bar that won't gradually come loose over time. Knowing that I've got this adjustment on the shelf means that I don't need to be that accurate with my measurements here. 135. Add on 15mm, 150. 150. Or too precise about fixing the supports exactly to these measurements. Before I place the shelf, I adjust the bolts to roughly where I think the right height should be. Not far out, first try. As I haven't yet fixed the saw to the shelf, I just roughly adjust the bolts to make sure that I'm in the right ballpark. So now I've actually screwed it down to the base. Some mitre saws, like this one, have rubber feet on the bottom. So as you screw it onto the base, the rubber compresses and goes down another 1 or 2 millimeters. So now it's in the final position and it's absolutely solid. I need to recheck, and if I need to make any final adjustments, I can do that now. So I've adjusted it the best I can and got it as close as I can. I've also screwed it down to stop it lifting up. It needs to be absolutely solid, both up and down. So it's okay adjusting it, but proof of the pudding is to see how it cuts. So that's nice and level, and there's no play in there at all. That's good. So that is about as good as it gets, absolutely flat on there. So all I need to do is one more cut. Don't even need any screws. So really happy with that. It's absolutely solid on the bench and absolutely flat. But if any time in the future it does move at all, it won't take me very long just to readjust it with those bolts and get it back to bang on. So that is a good job done. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you next time.